Hi everyone, my name is Billy and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition. Our guest today is Molly Georgakis, Executive Director at the Association of Professors of Gynecology and Obstetrics. Welcome to Humans of Authenticity, Molly.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So good to have you here with us. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners first?
I'm Molly Georgakis. I'm currently the Executive Director of the Association of Professors of Gynecology and Obstetrics, APGO. I've been with the organization a little over 5 years. I've been working in associations since 1995. My first job was with the United Cerebral Palsy Associations, and I've worked with a number of organizations since then. Those of us in the association sphere know there's an association for everything. I've worked in associations focused on electronic payments and different things. My longest tenure before this was with the Eye Bank Association of America, working with eye banks who recovered corneal tissue for transplant. And that was another small staff association. And that's where I finally figured out my niche is in working with both organizations have small staffs, but also that focus on the greater good of society or the community. So when I made the decision to try to step into the executive director / CEO role, I found this fabulous organization and it's been a great experience. We weathered COVID during my first few years as an executive director. So really happy to be here to talk a little bit about what we do. I will tell you that I'm one of the people that found their way into association management. And once I was here, I loved it. I love the fact that you wear many hats every day. You are often in a situation where you're trying to figure out on the fly how to get something accomplished. And it's never dull. So yeah, very happy that is where my career has led and happy to be where I am now.
That's awesome. So you've been in associations for nearly 30 years now.
Yes, I had a 2-year foray into the for-profit sector, but other than that, it's all been nonprofits.
Nice. What has keeping you in this sector for so long?
I think it really suits my personality. I like to do a lot of different things every day. I like to stretch myself, and I'm almost never happier than when I'm in a situation where I'm trying to figure out how to do something or how to accomplish something. I think that's a particular mentality that is common in the nonprofit world, especially in these smaller organizations where you do wear multiple hats. I like working on a small, tight-knit staff. I like working with a board of directors that is an expert in its own field, and I'm just there to help them achieve. And I really like learning the whole new language, if you will, of a new organization. Each organization has a lot of acronyms. You have to really learn and do a deep dive into what your members do and learn to speak their language. And I find that fascinating. It sort of speaks to everything that makes me tick. I love to learn. So yeah, it's just been a perfect scenario for me.
I resonate a lot with you when you say you love to learn the language whenever we switch between organizations. And I remember one of my first association management experience was with a farmer society. And I mean, coming from a non-English speaking background, speaking the language is already hard, but now I'm working with these farmers. That's a whole new language I have to learn. So I resonate a lot with this point. You also mentioned that working in association management allow you to stretch yourself more. Can you give me an example of how that worked? Or was there situations that you were able to do within association management that would never happen in any other sector?
I can't say for sure that it would not have happened in another sector, but I think it has been specific to association management that I've often inherited something or something was part of my job description in a new role that I'd never done before. I can give you a specific example from my current role. As the executive director of the organization, I manage all of our finance as well. I don't have a finance background. I learned on the job how to manage a budget, how to create a budget, how to speak the language, but it was never a primary role for me. There was always at least one other person that handled all of that. So when I got into this job, I very quickly had to learn how to do everything from running payroll and accounts payable to managing our bank accounts and our investments. Now, obviously, I have some vendors that I work with. We have a broker and an external controller that helps me with my finance, but I get everything ready for them. I reconcile the accounts and I do all of that. And that was something that I never even doing before, but it's been fascinating and it's given me a forensic understanding of association finances that I don't think I would have gotten any other way. While there are times when I really wish there was somebody else to be running some of these financial scenarios and doing some of this work, it's also been extremely valuable. And I can't discount how much it's helped me in other ways.
It is a very relevant example. So I noticed that once we understand finance or how our numbers work within our organizations, then we can start maximizing the opportunities and pointing out the gaps so that we can improve the organization's performance better. So extremely relevant learning. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I want to pause and run a little bit of reflections with you. So you think about your journey in associations since 1995. What is the one thing that you like the most about yourself in that journey?
I would say my adaptability is what I like the most about myself. You're working with your members, your volunteers, your volunteer leadership, your coworkers. You often have suppliers, vendor, contractors. And I think you have to be comfortable having a slightly different conversation with each one of these constituencies. I like the opportunity to flex my conversational muscles and my relatability. And I think that has been the one sustaining thing. It started when I was in my very first job, and I'll be doing it all day today when we hang up. That's the thing I like the most. And it's part of the thrill of the work. You're never going to be bored if you're working with associations.
Yeah, I've learned that none of our days are the same when we are in this sector, and that's really fascinating. I mean, it's keep me on my toe, and it's give me challenge every day that I turning up to work.
You seem to like it too. I think there are some of us that do. And it's good to be able to listen to that aspect of ourselves and feed it. So, yeah, I also have a sibling that works in this kind of work. And we have conversations, and everybody else in the room is just kind of looking at us like, what? But it's part of the day to day. Every day's a little different, and that's good.
I also noticed that you've been working in different sectors during your tenures. Is there one particular sectors that you feel very strongly connected to compared to others?
I tend to like working with organizations that have some involvement in the greater good. So when I work with the Eye Bank Association, my members were helping people to see, and that was very important to our work every day. And at the end of the day, if it was a tough day, I still felt like I was helping people that were doing really good work. And I feel that way now working with obstetricians and gynecologists who also are educators, medical educators. They're teaching the future physician workforce, which I think is really important, critically important. I'm not doing that work, but this is my way of supporting them in doing that great work. And typically what I like to do. So there are a lot of organizations that do that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it's any particular means of establishing or getting to the greater good, but I think that's the commonality in the roles that I've been most happy in.
I appreciate that. I'm hearing that you enjoy working with organizations who support the members to make a bigger impact to the community that they serve.
I wish I could have said it so succinctly and beautifully. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank
Here we
you.
go. Here we go. Thank you. Now we're talking. All right. I want to also touch on your mantra. What is your mantra as the leader of the organization?
Well, it's going to sound really rudimentary, but it's basically I/we can do this. I really believe that there's nothing that we can't do as an organization or as individuals or as teams if we work together, we put one foot in front of the other, and we commit to getting the work done. So it's pretty simple, but it's actually been something that has served me so well throughout my career and my life. You know, if you break it down into the smaller, manageable bites, you can solve any problem, achieve anything, figure anything out. So that's kind of my mantra. And I've always been someone who likes to learn as I'm working or on the job. So it's been important throughout my career.
Can you give me an example? So I'm looking for something that looks so enormously huge in the first impressions, and then how do you break it into chunks?
Yes, I'm sure you've heard the same answer from others that you've spoken with, but when the COVID pandemic hit and I was about 15 months into the job, maybe it was 16 months, something like that, I had never been through a pandemic before. I had never been in any kind of situation where I had to cancel a bunch of meetings with six-figure cancellation penalties attached to them. I hadn't done any large virtual meetings. I hadn't supervised a team that was remote. And all of those things happened basically at one time. And at the same time, my staff was concerned and we were scared. And so we had to manage all of that too. So I really decided that the only way to do this was to just take one issue at a time. I did rely on some experts, my attorney in terms of the hotel contract. I work with physicians, so I had a good group of people to talk to about when we were coming back to meetings, what safety measures we needed to take and that kind of thing. We very quickly found an online platform to do a virtual meeting. Actually, we planned to some degree have a meeting app that could become a virtual platform for one of our meetings because we just knew that it was going to be unlikely that we were going to be in person. So, I mean, these were all things that not only had I never dealt with, but nobody on my staff had ever dealt with. And the organizations that I was working with had never dealt with. I'm not going to say that I went through that with no concerns. I definitely had anxiety about it and was worried about things. For example, with the hotel, pulled up the contract, looked at the contract, talked to my attorney, wrote the necessary letters, got them out, and continued talking with the organizations about how to find a mutually agreeable solution, whether it was rebooking for a later date or in some cases negotiating a reduced penalty. To me, that was the most recent example of having to figure it out. And it was figured out when it was figured out. I knew that was the only way to get it sorted was to just take each little piece and start working on it until the whole was solved or the solution was in place.
There are so much lesson that everyone learns through COVID. I'm also hearing a bit of foresight in your response there as well when you say that you plan the meetings with the potential for it to become virtual.
We had the benefit, if you want to call it the benefit, of everything sort of happening in March. I remember thinking, we're in the clear because we just had our meeting, so we don't have to worry about this. But it turned out the next year we were not able to have the meeting in person. That was our February, March meeting, our annual meeting each year. But we also have a meeting in January. And I think we knew pretty quickly that that was going to be tough to hold in person. So as we started working with the hotel, we started working with a platform that could be a meeting app or be an online platform if we needed it to be. So yeah, we had some time to think through that. I mean, there were many organizations that did not have that time. And I'm glad that we had a really good virtual meeting. It worked out.
I'd love to move to the keyword conversations with you for the second part of this interview. What do you select for our discussion today?
After a lot of thought, I selected credibility. And when I selected credibility, I had my own definition of what that is. And when I went to look at the definition, it was actually a little bit different. So it's kind of interesting to see what it means to me. I think it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. The definition is the quality or power of inspiring belief. Not exactly what I thought it was, what it meant. And it's funny, when I looked up the synonyms, I thought it was interesting. There are a lot of synonyms, but one of them is authenticity. So that was a nice coincidence.
I am interested in your definitions of credibility. Are you comfortable of sharing that?
Sure, absolutely. I was thinking about it. The duality of it for me was a lot of us work in associations that are inspiring or establishing credibility for our members or the profession of our members or something like that. So I was kind of thinking about that versus my own credibility with my board of directors, my staff, my vendors, our partners. I did step into this role after somebody had been here for 30 plus years. So I definitely felt the need to establish my own credibility as an association professional with knowledge and expertise. But I was very quickly thrown into a couple of situations where we were talking about the credibility of the organization and its members and what we do. So I guess it's similar to what this definition is, but to me, it was more about having like the bona fides. And I guess I was looking at it a lot from a trust perspective rather than a belief perspective. Trust is something that's very important to me. Belief is not something I feel like is in my everyday vocabulary. So Yeah, so that was a little bit different. I think at the end of the day, it's kind of the same overall goal. You want people to recognize that you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing, whether it's you personally or your organization. But I thought that was an interesting twist.
There is a lot of good bits that I love to unpack from that. What I'm hearing is different implications of credibility. As the ED of an organization, you have your own credibility when you're working with different stakeholders. As the head of the organizations, you have the responsibility to establish credibility of your members among the community that they serve, as well as strengthening the credibility of the organizations that you are leading. So I'd love to, if you can unpack each of those elements for me,
I can elaborate and see if that
please.
helpful. So, for example, when we're talking about the credibility of the organization, my members at APGO put together medical student objectives for all undergraduate students for their OBGYN clerkship. So this is designed to ensure that all medical students go learn the same baseline information about obstetrics and gynecology, no matter what specialty they're going to go into. So the credibility of the organization has been established so that medical schools use these tools, and it is widely accepted that they are what students need to know before they go on. So that's an example of the organization's credibility, which, to be fair, was established long before I got here. It's just my role to help ensure that we are able to continue to do this. And by supporting my volunteers to put these things together and making sure that we are carving out space in our overall yearly work to ensure that these are being updated, revised, reviewed regularly. So that would be an example of the organization's credibility. My personal professional credibility, I'll kind of harken back to what we were saying before when I was talking about the financial piece. While I've been doing this finance since I got here, I really wanted to know that I was doing it well, even though I have the oversight of my external controller. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding the GAAP principles and all of the things that I needed to know. So I took an online course to get a certificate in nonprofit finance. It's just like a first stab at it. There are other additional sections that you can take, like this is nonprofit accounting 1. There's like 2 and there are more. But to me, having that certificate was important in being able to be credible. I don't think anybody was questioning what I was doing before, but for me, I kind of needed that extra stamp of approval to know that I was actually doing everything that I could to be credible in that area. So, and then we're also talking about vendors, stakeholders, staff, and all of the other entities that we interact with. And I think part of that credibility is just being reliable, paying on time, answering questions, meeting whatever deadlines. If there's something that we're working on together, just appreciating that partners, everybody has their own work to do. And whatever we're doing together, we need to make sure that we meet our established timelines. And then with staff, we went remote without really planning to go remote. We had most of the staff working remotely 1 day a week. So we had some systems in place, but we had to really quickly get up to speed on how to work remotely. And I will say, I still think that's a bit of a work in progress. People who are used to being in an office every day and working together and being able to feel like a team physically, I think that's something we're still working on, but we are constantly working on it. So we do have our regular weekly Teams meeting. I have regular meetings with a lot of the staff, not all of them, not everybody wants or needs one. Appreciating how people like to work, I think, is part of that credibility piece, making sure that you have that kind of mutual understanding of how you both function best. But yeah, those are the things I'm thinking about in terms of credibility. And I do realize that that is going more toward my definition of credibility than the dictionary definition of credibility, because I don't think I'm talking about beliefs. I think I'm talking about trust.
You say something that struck my mind, the extra stamp of approval. I want to pause here and share a bit of my story and the reason why this struck with me. At some point in time, I also thought I need that extra stamp of approval by taking so many degrees. And I'm not kidding, like I have 3 masters. I got the CAE and I'm about to get into another certification programs. When we say the extra stamp of approval, from your perspective, is there an end point to that? Is there a point that you think this is now enough? Now I can be confident enough with what I already have? what I already know. Is there ever a stage like that?
That's an interesting question. At the end of the day, I didn't feel like I didn't know what I was talking about or that I wasn't credible. And nobody certainly asked me to do this. I think, and it sounds like you might agree, that there's just a lot of value in learning for yourself. One of the good things about it is that you have these credentials to show other people or other organizations or whoever might be interested. But I think for me, I really always liked learning better when it was just for me. It flexes my muscles, it gives me a broader exposure to some of this stuff. I mean, I know APGO's finances, but if I were looking at some other organizations or for whatever reason, that class helped me to understand these concepts more broadly. So it's interesting. I think there are some of us, and I will admit, I mean, I'm amazed by all of your master's degrees. I'm the kind of person probably going to be more interested in a certificate program. I mean, I found the CAE process really valuable, both for the group of people that I became close to and that became the people that I could go to if I had questions, the colleagues that I met and the sort of network that I formed, but also because it was helpful to understand how other organizations are similar or different to the organizations that I've worked with. So it's interesting. Is there ever an endpoint for that? I hope not, because it's something I'm doing for me. And I think the organizations are benefiting from it. So I hope I keep finding things that I want to learn in classes that I want to take that fit into my busy professional life. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm going for a PhD. That would be an endpoint, I guess. Trying to broaden my horizons and be as well-rounded as I can be. And to know that if I need it, I have this extra information and knowledge in my pocket.
Thank you. And I appreciate the perspective, especially when you point out the value in learning for ourselves. That's actually what I enjoy. Earlier in the conversations, you mentioned that people recognize that you need to know what you're talking about as part of the credibility. And then you also say, we don't need to know everything. Can you reconcile the two for me?
Yes. So I think the part of being credible when you don't know everything is saying that you don't know everything. And there are two ways to handle that. The first is, I don't know that answer. I'm going to find out and I'll get back to you. And I think that we've gotten away from it being okay to say that in our society. And I think it's important. Nobody should be expected to know absolutely everything about everything. And again, if you don't know something, it's an opportunity to learn. So, what could be wrong with saying you don't know it and it's time to do a deeper dive and to get that information? The other way of handling that, and I think a lot of associations do, I've done it certainly many times and we'll do it again, is to find an external expert. We have a ton of really knowledgeable consultants in our space, and they have done a lot of work and a lot of education themselves to understand things and to be experts, but they've also worked with all of these other organizations. So they have this sort of environmental knowledge of what other organizations have done in the past that's been successful, potential pitfalls. And I'm always a big fan of going to a consultant, having them help us to uncover or determine how we need to handle something or what we want to do going forward. So I think that's how you can be credible when you don't know everything. And I think anybody who says they do know everything isn't that credible.
Thank you for calling it out. We need that. So credibility, is that something that we proactively build, or is that something that we passively earn? Or can it be both?
That's a really good question, V. I mean, I do think for the most part, it has to be established. Sometimes it's probably established by a credential, a PhD, an MD, a master's degree in something, a lot of experience in doing this professionally for a period of time, with proven results. So I think most of the time it has to be established. And I'm only thinking about this right now because of the way you posed that question. But I do think there is a way to build it passively with a group of people that you're working with on an ongoing basis. And that's by, using your knowledge and being right a good percentage of the time, saying when you're wrong and getting the right information so people understand that you're not going to just pretend. You're going to figure out what the right answers are or how best to proceed. I think there is some passive credibility that's built based on time after time, having the answer, figuring out the answer, doing things the right way. So does that answer your question?
I guess what I'm trying to get to is as we work together and we listen to our contribution to the conversations, we start understanding the perspective, understanding that you have a credibility that we can always go to you for advice on such and such. So I think that's where I want to get to. And the other thing is with that understanding, it is important for us to uphold the quality of our work, regardless of whatever setting that we are in, because we never know how one time of sloppiness can impact our credibility in an unintentional way.
It's true. And not owning up to that moment of sloppiness is completely opposed to establishing credibility. I think we all have made mistakes. And I think being able to say we made a mistake is key because that's also a part of having people trust you or believe you. The other thing that I think is really important that I didn't mention before is crediting others when they've done the work. You know, for my organization to have credibility, it's not all about me. It's about our volunteer leaders. It's about the rest of the staff and the work that they've done. It's about the history of the organization and what's come before me. And I'm very aware of that because I stepped into a legacy that was already firmly established by my predecessor. So I think that's also huge. And, you know, reading the room and understanding how much change people can take on at a certain, how quickly people can adapt to change and how quickly change should be implemented is another thing. I feel like that's something that I've had to learn the hard way. So yeah, but being able to own that is part of being trustworthy, credible.
Nice. Now you mentioned make mistake, and it's okay to make mistake.
Mhm.
Is there an example that you can share with us, or were there a time that your credibility was challenged that you can share with us?
It's a good question. I probably should have thought about this before I came in.
It's a conversation in a moment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I've made mistakes. And I think, again, anybody who says they haven't, well, wow, that's impressive to me. I think one of the mistakes that I made when I first started this job was thinking that everybody wanted innovation. You know, I was hired to come in and change and innovate. I learned very quickly that that wasn't exactly the whole. I mean, it's not that people are opposed to change and innovation, but recognizing and appreciating the things that are in place and how successful they've been. Some of the programs that are volunteer led and function so well. I thought I might come in and make some changes there. And it was made apparent to me that that was not the right approach. Not that those things will never change and not that incremental change isn't possible or that looking at these things and determining if things need to change isn't important because it is. But I think appreciating what's happened, its importance to people, their love of the organization and the reasons that they volunteer, I'm still learning that. And I will never make that particular mistake again. I will always want to listen a little bit more and talk to people a little bit more about what's important to them and really spend more time understanding before I decide that I know what's best. In associations, every organization is different and it's built around its members. And knowing what's important to them and their needs and their wants and their expectations is critical to success because it's really not about my personal success. It's about the organization's success and the members feeling that they are a valued part of the organization. So yeah, that's been a lesson learned for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. I've learned a lot during my time with association management, and I'm sure you would agree too that it's never about us, the staff. It's always about our members and the community they serve. So if we say that we are successful in such initiatives, it means that our members are happy, our members are successful, and they thrive in the community that we serve. And that's really gives me the motivations for the work that we do.
It's true. If the whole point is being here to enable our members to do their jobs, to support them however we can, then knowing what that means to them is the first step in establishing a successful tenure. So yeah, I think that, and you know, as a first-time executive director, I'm not shocked that that was something I needed to learn by making a few mistakes. You know, it's part of the job. It's part of the career trajectory, I think.
Are you comfortable to share how that experience of making mistake impact your relationship with your stakeholder or impact your credibility within the organization?
Sure. I mean, it would be interesting to ask some of my volunteer leaders, but I think I had to do a little bit of, backtracking and repair work with some of them for sure. I'm talking long-term volunteers that have been part of the organization for a very long time. And I had to maybe have a few staff people tell me, hey, let me give you some history here, which was great. I mean, I will tell you, one of the huge benefits of this organization is the tenure of the staff. When I started in 2008, there was a staff of 6 people plus me, and all of those individuals stayed with the organization until our coordinator just left in March. So, almost 6 years of having the whole staff stick around for my tenure was really important to me. And I feel like helped with my credibility with the members very much. And they have great credibility with the members. They have such a tenure. I think almost everybody's been there at least 10 years other than me. And some quite a bit more. So that was a huge help to me. So hearing from them some of their thoughts, concerns about some of the things I thought we might do also probably helps me to avoid maybe some of the major egg on my face, because maybe we were talking about some things in the office before I actually tried to activate them. But I definitely had to have conversations with a few of my volunteer leaders to, help them understand I only had the best of the organization in mind when I had these ideas, but listening to their reasoning for why maybe we should not be so quick to implement all of it at one time, or how things had functioned. And it helped me to understand the members in the organization better. So I would say the best thing to do when starting a new position in an organization, especially if you're in the executive director or CEO role, is have some informational conversations with the stakeholders and the volunteer leaders. And, I met quite a few of them through the search process because they were on the search committee, but that didn't mean that they were representative of everybody. I would be happy to talk to anybody that was starting to step into that role and share with them some specifics about, what I learned, and see if that would be helpful, because I do think I could have probably asked a couple of my CEO colleagues for some pointers, but I like to learn on the job. So sometimes I just have to step in it.
I hear a lot of bravery in that response as well. Thank you for sharing that. And I think this is a really nice transition to the next part of the episode about legacy. As a leader of the organizations, what's the legacy that you envision to sculpting out for your organization?
Yes, as I mentioned, I took over for somebody who had been there for 30 plus years, who really grew the organization and did so many great things to establish it. And so I definitely want to continue to be a steward of all of those efforts, because I think it's really important to be able to recognize and appreciate those that came before you. What I feel like I'm working so much on right now is strengthening some of our financial practices because of this close relationship to the finances, and making them, just documenting things and making sure that anybody could interpret what's happening and anybody could take over if need be. I think that's really critical. I think continuity is huge, and, succession planning and that kind of thing is huge. One of the things we're going to undertake now that I think would really be my legacy if it all goes well, or not, I guess, but I really would like for it to be a positive legacy, is we're going to work on our governance structure. When you think about an organization that grew up over 30 years and a profession that is experiencing a ton of change, I think we probably could make some changes to our governance structure to better support the organization as it moves into the future. So I'm going to be looking for a consultant to work with on that effort. And it'll probably be a lengthy process. It may take us a year to really implement, because it'll require bylaws changes and all of that stuff. But I would love to see that be my legacy, refining or adjusting the governance structure to really include the maximum amount of volunteers, and to really structure us to meet the challenges of the coming decades. The last piece of that, and I know like legacy is, I could probably talk about this for days. I mentioned we have this long-term staff that's been so incredible. But as people near retirement age and think about their next acts, bringing on new staff successfully is a big thing, because our members have known these staff members. They know their families. These relationships are special. I don't feel like I've seen these in a lot of the associations that I've worked with. So I think that is going to be challenging, but in a good way when we get there. So that would be, I think, the last thing that I'm always thinking about and making notes on and trying to kind of plan for. So I think that would be the last thing that I would say. I'm sure, like I said, I could go on for days, but if those things were in place, I would feel really good about my time here.
I love how specific these are. I reckon the more specific these sort of things, the higher likelihood that we will be able to implement them. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
So imagine if your organization were a fictional character, who would it be and why?
Fictional character. Wow, that is such an interesting question. Wow, I'm not sure that I have a character in mind, but I think that my organization would be a superhero for sure,
Yeah.
because my members are protecting people throughout the world with their work. I think they're heroes. They were working during COVID when I was at home, safe and sound. A lot of my members are working under conditions that are not ideal because of the political climate in the US right now. And they still do their best every single day to take care of their patients. And they're teaching future generations of OBGYNs. So I wish I could think of the perfect fictional character that encapsulates all of that. But if it's okay, I would say, generically, that this organization is made up of superheroes. And my job is just to help them be the superheroes that they are. I'm kind of like, maybe what's the guy in the Bat Cave that has all the gadgets and tools to help Batman do his job, or somebody like that. But I wish I was better with my superhero knowledge. Maybe that's something I have to study next, but I hope that will suffice because I can't think of the perfect fictional character. Alfred?
Yes, Alfred.
Yeah, so the staff is Alfred, and the members, I don't want to say they're Batman, but they are definitely an incredible superhero that does feats of strength and intelligence every single day.
That is really cool. Thank you so much. This is the end of the episode. Thank you again for your time and sharing your story with us today. Lois?
Absolutely. First, I just want to say thank you for having me. This has been great. You've given me so much food for thought, and I can't wait to, have a eureka moment when I figure out the superhero my amazing organization is. But in the meantime, thank you. And my name is Molly Georgakis, and you are listening to Humans of Authenticity, the CEO Special Edition.